Crypto is a casino, but it's also a casino that lets you bet on new technologies. My research has been focused on trying to say which proteins are located within specific subcompartments of the cell nucleus.
Oh my God. Oh my God. This is how
super complex systems in biology. And then I saw blockchain. I'm like, wow, that's kind of easy.
Come on, man. That's too easy.
DeSci initially, just sort of the idea of thinking about how to improve science using different technologies from crypto, Web3, what have you. Some people will disagree, but I do think that we kind of have the tools to understand these systems really well and make informed decisions about how they should be built and organized and designed. Because science is hard work, and you don't do it for the money. You do it because you love it. But sometimes you start thinking, is it worth the sacrifice when I could be happy doing something else?
None of us feel okay.
And they just started, they were small projects, got a couple $1,000, and now they are multi-billion-dollar companies. How crazy is that?
The market cap, I remember we had this impact report at Bitcoin come out when I was there. It's really cool because it's not really a DAO, but it kind of is, but we're not calling it a DAO. But it is sort of like a community with some
cult.
Governance. It's a cult, yeah.
Welcome to the GreenPilled.network podcast. If you're just joining us, we're building a coordination, a network society of thousands of hackers, dreamers, and doers using crypto to bring positive sum digital systems to the world. This podcast features the people who are doing it, and we publish a season of 5 to 10 episodes every couple months. This season is about how to DAO. I'm releasing a book with my co-author, Punkar, who is also a DAO native person, and we are really excited about helping people find prosperity and to help them thrive in the frontier. For time immemorial, people have gone to the frontier in order to find new prosperity, new opportunities, and our generation's frontier is the internet. We want to teach people about the future of DAOs, the future of internet coordination, and this season of How to DAO is all about how do we do that? How do we DAO? How do we find more prosperity in the internet frontier? And this guest season of 5 to 10 episodes is going to be about how to DAO. The next voices that you'll hear will be myself or my guest co-host Punkar talking about how to DAO. Hope you enjoy this season. See you. Peace.
Welcome to the How to DAO podcast, brought to you by GreenPilled.network. Today, we are kicking things off with an incredible guest, Boris Dyakov. Boris is a PhD candidate, scientist, and innovator who's bringing the worlds of cutting-edge biology and blockchain technology. We will discuss his fascinating research, his vision for decentralized science, and how he's using blockchain to reimagine the future of scientific collaboration and incentives. So let's get started. Hey Boris, welcome.
Hey, Punkar, nice to be here. Nice to see you.
Thank you. So, I was not reading all your papers because it's just too difficult for me to understand all the research you are doing. But I tried the one you put together for the lame audience to understand what actually you are researching on. And maybe let me give it a shot. So what you are basically tracking, it's some connections in our cells which are very fluid. So they are actually not interconnected, tied together, but they are basically very fluid. They're like networks, and they sometimes work together, sometimes don't. And then we don't know if they work together or not before. And now you are basically mapping this whole network of different proteins and figuring out who is working with whom for what reasons. Is that kind of the way, or?
Honestly, you're actually like a good part of the way there. Like directionally, everything you just said is basically true. It's just all the little details to fill in to be more precise with things. But yeah, I think that's actually a great a great sort of take on what my research career has been focused on.
Nice. And we don't know it now, I assume. That's why you're doing the research. So what the research is contributing to, when we actually figured that out, what we will realize.
Yeah, so I mean, so my PhD that I'm almost done, trying to wrap it up, just need to finish a bit of thesis writing and some revisions for a paper. It's in the Department of Molecular Genetics at the University of Toronto. And molecular genetics is like a very broad term. It's like saying biology. It's really just referring to the scale of biology that we're looking at. And I really like to think about this sort of work as reverse engineering biology, because we have living things made of cells, and these living things evolved over billions of years. They are super, super complex machines, very complex systems with lots of different parts that are very dynamic. And even like the simplest, like single-celled organism, that is a machine that's more complex than something humans have built or designed by orders of magnitude. Super complicated. Using various like chemical, biochemical, analytical techniques, we can say or see or explain which parts are there, which proteins or what DNA, RNA, different biomolecules are present inside the cell. And proteins are basically the machines that make life happen. They're like the little parts inside cells that do things. So the thing is, we don't know what most of them do, and there's even very basic information we don't have for most of the, say 20,000 plus. It's more than that, but bottom low end estimate 20,000 different proteins in human cells. So my research has been focused on trying to say which proteins are located within specific subcompartments of the cell nucleus. And I could talk about this for hours, but the important things to remember are like cells have compartments. At least our cells, eukaryotic cells, have compartments that we call organelles. A lot of people are familiar with the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, or the nucleus, which is kind of the control center. It's where your DNA is kept, your genome is kept, where gene expression and gene regulation happens. And the thing is, the nucleus actually has subcompartments that are called nuclear bodies. And these are difficult to study for various reasons. But my research has been focused on, like you said, figuring out which proteins spatially associate with each other inside these structures so we can better explain how they work. Because if you know what a protein does and you know that it's part of a nuclear body, you can start to explain maybe its function there. So yeah, basically created a map of over 2,000 proteins in human cells to try to explain this. And that's been the focus of my PhD work. And I think there's a lot of fun parallels to draw between that and complex systems and blockchains for sure.
Well, yeah, let's do that. I think that would be, and when I was thinking what you are describing, the different kind of compartments and structures, I'm like, well, how we can tie this to DAO, with maybe even AI to attach to it in some sense, because like when I think about it, we understand the structure as like this is the core DAO, this is the sub team, this is the another team or sub DAO, and then we tied to it some like the new AI model, which is like the neurons doing something which we don't understand actually, and like giving us some outcome. So basically, we are studying that kind of AI attached to it because we don't know what they are doing. There we like created the model, but we have like no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I think I could tell the long story about how I got into crypto. To make the long story short, initially through DeSci, but DAOs as a concept got me very excited. And I was sort of, over the last few years, kind of charting my way out of academia and looking for other opportunities or things that excited me that I could do career-wise. And yeah, DeSci initially, just sort of the idea of thinking about how to improve science using different technologies from crypto, Web3, what have you, and concepts like DAOs and new ways of collective ownership and organization. Yeah, that got me really excited, and I went down the rabbit hole, the Ethereum rabbit hole, and started learning about how all the technology works and why people care about it. But another thing that kind of drew me to all of this is that even though we're working with complex systems that have a lot of complicated parts, compared to what I spend a lot of time studying in biology, a lot of this tech is it's much simpler, much more tractable. The problems are much more tractable, really. It's like, I mean, they're also new, and we're not studying something that evolved over billions of years. We're studying and designing and improving things that people are actively building. But it does feel like we can actually come up with very satisfying solutions in a lot of cases. I mean, maybe some people will disagree, but I do think that like we kind of have the tools to understand these systems really well and make informed decisions about how they should be built and organized and designed.
So basically, what you are saying is like, well, I was studying this like super complex systems in biology, and then I saw blockchain. I'm like, wow, that's kind of easy. It's like very similar, but like I can actually see what is going on there, and the systems are way simpler than like in my PhD research and what I see under the microscope. And so, what was your first actually project in crypto when you kind of said like, okay, I will try to explore that.
hmm This is crazy to think about actually, because now we're looking at 3 years ago, I guess. Wow, yeah, it's been 3 years since I've kind of been in the space, and at that time I was, and I still am, finishing my PhD. But I was spending a lot of time thinking about, I guess, entrepreneurship and realizing that was something I was interested in, and that there were a lot of problems in science that I cared a lot about finding potential solutions to, because I noticed there was a lot of problems in science, and they kind of boil down to incentive problems. So I was thinking, like, how can we bring more money to science? How can we sort of fix the broken business models within biotech VC, where it's super capital intensive and super high risk, and not a lot of people can invest in this, and we don't really have incentives for experts like scientists or patient groups, people who actually benefit from the development of medicines. They don't have an opportunity to participate in the upside of these discoveries and the commercialization of these drugs. So I was thinking about those sorts of problems, like how can we help scientists capture more value, and ultimately, how do we make it so more people want to be scientists? So people who are passionate don't leave academia to look for a less philosophically fulfilling corporate job that pays a lot more. Because science is hard work, and you don't do it for the money. You do it because you love it. But sometimes you start thinking, like, is it worth the sacrifice when I could be happy doing something else? Um, so anyway, those are my motivations, and I actually met some people through Twitter because I was following all these biotech VCs and thinking maybe I would work in biotech VC after I graduate. Nice combination of like business thinking and scientific technical expertise. You get to meet a lot of people. Anyway, they were sharing this cool proposal for a project called Lab DAO, which is still around, still existing, and I really loved the concept that they had brought into the world with this proposal. Like, let's have a DAO where it's almost like a decentralized research institute, and the community can do work together, contribute your scientific expertise and figure out ways to share in the results. Like if this generates IP, then the entire DAO and all the members and all the contributors will, have some ownership of this. And this was sort of incubated by VitaDAO and Molecule, who people who are familiar with DeSci are definitely familiar with these names. And they decided this should be its own thing and, sort of put this out into the world. I saw the proposal. I reached out to the sort of like main founder, Nicholas, and just DM'd him and said, hey, I really loved your idea. You're thinking about a lot of the same problems that I'm thinking about. I would love to get involved. And he invited me to the Discord server, and we just started kind of jamming, and, progress on my PhD really slowed down because I was having so much fun there thinking about how to do all these things. And that's really what kind of brought me into this whole world. Like I think that's when I first started using Discord, for example. And I'd been learning about crypto in the sort of couple months leading up to that, and starting to read articles and dig deeper and, follow that kind of stuff. So it all kind of just like came at once. And yeah, so I was quite involved with the Lab DAO for that first year, doing a lot of the community building, community growth. The team went on to I was working on my PhD, full time. So I didn't drop that to join the core team or anything, but I stayed involved on the community side. The team raised like over 4 million, and they're still building now. Now they're doing a lot of sort of bio ML, like how do we have generative models in a decentralized way that can do drug discovery. But this was like
That's cool.
my entry point.
N-
And yeah,
Nice. No, that's like how you get into DAO. You just invited to the Discord, and then you figure out what you actually can
yeah,
do there.
exactly. Yeah,
You know,
literally. It
for,
was, yeah,
for me, it was the same. Like a couple DAOs, like I just like, hey, I love your mission, and I see you are struggling here. I have some skills there, so let me just help you out. And like, you might not get paid at the beginning, then they see like, wow, you are actually bringing tons of value. So here is some bounty, or here is some part-time kind of gig. That's perfect. And honestly, I remember how you were explaining to me Lab DAO at Edinburgh. We were at the MakerDAO party. So it was not really the conference, but it was the in church.
yes,
So
I
there,
remember that.
if people are familiar with Denver, like there is a big club which is called the church, and it's actually a former church. There are always good parties there. I remember we were talking a lot about the IP, how you decentralize it, and like should you kind of own it and stuff like that. And it was actually the time we were working together in Bankless Consulting. So probably it was the similar time you
Bankless,
kind of entered the
Bankless
crypto.
consulting. Yeah. This was the next thing that I got involved in, DAO wise, because I was, on one hand trying to learn more about how like big organized DAOs with lots of contributors work, because I was involved in this small kind of scrappy upstart DAO. I got involved with Bankless Consulting super early days, and that was really fun. That was like a real, like, the backstory was I was trying to get into consulting as like the thing to do after my PhD, and they basically said you don't have any real working experience, so go do that and then reapply. A lot of learning out of preparing for cases and all, and all that stuff. And I felt like, okay, I understand how this work is done. I could do some of this, and then getting involved with Bankless Consulting within BDAO. Now it's called something else.
Black Flag DAO.
Black Flag DAO. Yes, I saw that. I still subscribe to the newsletter, of course, but yeah, it was really cool because I got in there, met a lot of great people like yourself, and a lot of people who are doing really cool things still, and I still run into them at conferences. It was awesome. Like I saw Omen in Bangkok at an event. I was like, oh man. And he lives in Toronto, so I run into him occasionally. But anyway, basically, I saw that it was like, wow, anybody can kind of get involved here, and if they bring value, they can be rewarded. And I remember I worked on a couple engagements with you, doing some like design thinking workshops, working with some other communities, and I basically like earned my way into like a full Bankless DAO membership by either getting tips or getting paid, or swapping some USDT cash sort of like payments for the Bankless tokens, and then I managed to get like a full, I forget if it was L1 or L2 membership. So that was a really cool experience for me. I got to meet a lot of people, and it was just very empowering that it's like, okay, anyone can come in, and if you can bring in deal flow and bring in like work for this sub DAO, I guess at the time it was a sub DAO before it spun out, you'll be rewarded for it. You don't need to be like a partner to be able to like bring deals into the firm. And I thought that was really cool. That like really kind of inspired me. It's not like I made a ton of money doing this, but it was like a little bit on the side, and I learned a lot, and it was like it opened my eyes to these possibilities.
Yeah, like I think this is the way how we wanted to be. And Bankless Consulting is still running in a little smaller scale as everything. It's in last 2 years, like regrouping. But we will have some Christmas call actually in like 2 weeks. So I will let you know so you can
Sweet.
join, because at the end of the day, it's about people. So we want to just like reconnect with the people we used to work with, or we will work in the future, and I would say that DAOs are about still like, the tech is cool, the blockchain is cool, but at the end you work with the people. And as you said, like, running into each other in the city you live or in the conferences and just like create this good community. And Bankless DAO, I would say, is one of the strongest community I actually like been with. Like there is almost no financial incentives within the DAO, but those people, like we would still connect. Like we hosted Eat Denver kind of dinner last year. It was like 30 people just show up, like, and like having like a strategy meeting about the new branding and stuff like that. And they all have their own jobs, but they just love it. So that's actually super cool. And so
Definitely some big lessons in there for I think a lot of like projects and communities, or rather projects that have communities and are trying to grow communities. And I should reflect on that some more, given the kind of things I'm thinking about for work now.
yeah, like
Yeah.
actually like growing large and strong community, Bankless that was great. People really like stick together because they had the same like mission. The Bankless, like not the brand, but the mission, like go Bankless. It was super strong in people. Like, yeah, we want to be sovereign, we want to own our financial freedom and like so yeah, that's definitely like learning for the community building.
Oh yeah.
Agree with you there. So when and then actually we worked together again at Gitcoin.
Oh yeah. At Gitcoin. Well, I think you actually maybe left right before I joined, or like you onboarded me, and then I think,
Yes,
and
I
then
think it
you,
was like just an overlap. We
yeah,
like actually did not work together, but like we met a little bit in the Discord there.
yeah. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
you got me onboarded. I think to like all the various, you know, Notion and whatever else I needed when I joined.
Yeah, because like I was like in the operation, so like make sure that every contributor have everything what they need to work.
Mhm.
And so basically Gitcoin was something on the like, let's say it's not a DeSci only, but it's not a consulting as you did bankless consulting, but it's something new. So can you kind of
Mm.
elaborate what you actually done there?
Yeah, so I was at Gitcoin for about 6 months, from I guess January 2023 to around June. And the story there is I got sort of well, I knew about Gitcoin already, but I met Scott Moore, who's one of the co-founders, and he was one of the, I guess, like co-leads of the public goods funding work stream, which basically runs the, well, I guess things have been restructured since then, but at the time they would run the Gitcoin grants rounds and handle like fundraising and partnerships for that. So again, I was focused on my PhD at the time, but Scott had asked me if I was interested in coming on part time to help figure out the next DeSci round, because there was a DeSci round. This is, I forget which grants round it was, but there was a DeSci round which was pretty successful. Vitalik put a bunch of money into it. A lot of projects kind of got funded and launched through that, and there was excitement and interest in doing another one. And it was also a cool time because the Allo protocol and Grant Stack were just launching around that time as well. So what I sort of, instead of just like raising some funds. There was some money left over that had been allocated to a second DeSci round from one of the sponsors or partners or donors or whatever. And what basically happened was, I could have just like run it as a normal sort of like round where I get some more money and then I do all this. But I wanted to experiment, again, being interested in decentralization and trying to see how we can make this stuff sustainable. I thought it would be really great if we can have community stewards actually run this, right? So I sort of like ran it, but I tried to decentralize my authority and more act as like the liaison between Gitcoin itself, like the PGF workstream, and these community stewards. So I had some fun with this. This was, I guess, a little bit after ETH Denver 2023. I kind of got a group chat going, like a Telegram group for like this like DeSci Gitcoin community. And because I'd been involved in DeSci early on, I knew a lot of people in the space, and I'd like followed the whole DeFi thing really closely, and I'm still, still following it. And we basically held like a small like election where we elected 4 stewards who would run the round and be responsible for vetting projects and doing all the operations kind of stuff on the back end, making sure that we're protected from Sybil stuff, etc. And we did like a on-chain vote using Joke Race. So there's an on-chain record of who voted for these stewards who got elected. There's a bunch of people who were interested, and we were lucky to have a bunch of community leaders from DeSci kind of take on the stewardship of the round, raised a little bit more money. And overall, I think we had like 80K in that round. And that was really cool. And, around the same time, I went to Zulu because Gitcoin was very involved there, like the original Zulu in Montenegro, and was spending a lot of time thinking about how to, do more things with Gitcoin, make grant rounds more sustainable. Working in Gitcoin was definitely interesting, like a real working DAO. It was really fun. So, I mean, I left, well, I stopped working at Gitcoin, I guess, in June, so a few months later. And I was working on some proposals to have these kind of like, it's almost like sub DAOs, like community led sub DAOs that were like somewhat autonomous, but still got support from Gitcoin. And I wanted to like try to shape the DeSci community into one of those. That didn't end up going through because there's a lot of sort of like restructuring happening at Gitcoin at the time. But what was really cool is the stewards from that round and other leaders in the DeSci community, they got together and they, I think, have done 2 more DeSci rounds since then. As like a sort of community run round using Grant Stack and Allo protocol. Haven't followed that stuff too closely, but it has been really awesome to see that like others have kind of taken up the mantle and kept the DeSci rounds running to make sure that some of these early exploratory projects can, try to have a shot at succeeding. I haven't thought about that stuff in a while, but I'm like, that turned out all right.
Yeah, that sounds like you got a lot of money to projects and DeSci, and like now they launch and maybe raised, because that's the purpose of Gitcoin. Like it's not like you cannot really survive on Gitcoin, but you can get this good start, and then you raise later on or whatever you need basically to succeed. But this is the this is the cake, and I think Uniswap started like that.
Oh yeah, one
So
inch and so many
yeah,
optimism, like tons of major
so
projects started as Gitcoin grantees. Yeah.
and they just like started. They were small projects, got a couple hundred, couple $1,000, and now they are multi-billion-dollar companies. Like,
Oh
how crazy
yeah,
is
yeah.
that?
The market cap. I remember we had this impact report at Gitcoin come out when I was there, and it's a really nice piece of you know marketing collateral. But it was like the combined market cap of Gitcoin former Gitcoin grantees at like an all-time high was like in the billions, like at least like 1.3 billion or something. For some reason, I remember that number because that's taking into account Uniswap, 1inch, all these big projects that really did start off as Gitcoin
Yeah,
grantees. It's amazing. Like the impact has been huge, and
and it should be
like
even more now because I think Uniswap alone is $1 billion now.
yeah, 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 and like
So
yeah, there's been like I don't know 80 million in funds distributed through Gitcoin.
yeah,
But we could probably talk about Gitcoin for hours, and I'm sure a lot of people listening
yeah.
to this have opinions or
But
yeah,
I will share the link in the show notes for the impact report because I think it's still live. So I will find it
yeah,
and share it. But like you said, like you also been in Zuzalu. So not everyone
yeah.
knows what Zuzalu is. So I think the simple start with that is like Vitalik again. So whatever Vitalik does and endorse, it happens. So now he basically created this kind of movement where he thought it would be nice to connect for a little longer period of time than a conference because it's usually very much rush. It's a weekend or week, but less than university, so you don't need to like spend 4 years or some people spend even more time at the universities. But like you're still connecting people and like creating those relationships basically. And I think they came up with like 2 months being like the ideal or 6 weeks being the ideal kind of time horizon. So how was the experiment actually? So the Montenegro Zuzo you were in was the first one.
It
So
was the
how was it?
yeah. Oh man. It was honestly it was like a pivotal. I'd say like I stayed for 6 weeks. It was a pivotal 6 weeks in my life just because of well, it was a very unique experience, and just the people who came through and who were involved were all like amazing, and I made like 200 friends kind of thing. Yeah, so I mean the backstory for people who haven't heard of Zuzalu, but it's this pop-up city network state co-living experiment that Vitalik launched I guess like a year and a half ago, basically. The idea was, yeah, to sort of like get like 200 people to live together for 2 months and just like live together, work together, have these sort of mini conferences with different theme weeks, eat lunch together. There's a very big longevity focus, a lot of like healthy living. We would be doing group runs. It was like, and it was really kind of amazing. A lot of really well-known Ethereum researchers were there because they were sort of co-working and like working on these ideas, but they brought their families. Like Justin Drake was there with his family and stuff. It was a really cute time, very wholesome. So how I like to describe it is it almost felt like well, it was like a rolling conference. Like each week was a different sub event. So there was one week which was a public goods funding focused, public goods focused, sort of like sub event. There was an AI and crypto one, network state stuff. There's longevity stuff. There's a synthetic biology sort of like mini conference, which I was involved in as well. And oh, of course, ZK was another one of like the big tracks. But so people came in for these different tracks, and it was like this like rolling conference, but it was also just like living life. Like there was a whole co-working space set up, and people were just like hanging out and working all day together or hosting little events and teaching each other things, having breakfast together, like I said. And honestly, what it kind of felt like was summer camp for nerds, because we're all like living together in this kind of like unique environment. And that's really, I think, the best way to explain the feeling. It was like summer camp with a bunch of like nerds. And I mean that in the best way possible, of course, being a huge nerd myself. But yeah, I went because, well, so I got invited through DeSci related sort of circles because the people who were organizing this were a lot of DAO folks, but also because I was part of Gitcoin at the time. It just seemed like a no-brainer to go because Gitcoin was quite involved with organizing this, or rather people from Gitcoin and also Gitcoin as an organization. So I went, and I'm super happy that I did it. Because when I first heard of it, I was like, this sounds crazy. Like Vitalik is putting on this like network state pop-up city thing in Montenegro. And I thought, this sounds like too much. Like I need to focus on my PhD instead of like extending my winter in Europe for this crazy thing. But then it was like, how could I not go to this? This sounds absolutely absurd. It's like, it'll be worth it just for the stories. But it ended up being worth so much more than that. And like, now there have been tons of these sort of Zuzalu spin-off events. Like they didn't do another Zuzalu, but Vitalik is still sort of helping a bunch of these other spin-offs that are happening. Edge City, a lot of people are familiar with that one. There's also Zoo Thailand, which is happening right now. And I think it's really cool because people have kind of taken on this same model and have continued to iterate and experiment with it. And there's been governance within the Zuzalu community to try to I haven't followed all of that too closely, but as with anything governance related, not everyone's always happy and there's maybe some drama here and there, but I think overall everyone has good intentions and people are still getting really cool experiences out of this. I did go to Zoo Berlin actually. That was really cool. It was a 2-week event in June. But aside from that, I don't think I've been to any because I've just been kind of busy.
Yeah, there is always drama with DAO governance.
Yeah,
And you want to try to decentralize and don't take favors and how we should be credibly neutral and stuff like that. And we are still people, so we will still fight kind of for our cause or don't like something. I think others though city which are happening right now, it's January Zugrama in India, so it should be very good. One of my friends are organizing that, and I'm also helping actually Switzerland. So it will be basically Zuzalo in Switzerland somewhere in the April.
cool.
Yeah, it will be happening in the theme park. So Alien theme park in the Switzerland will be taking over by crypto nerds uh, for
Amazing.
for 6 weeks
Amazing.
or longer. So it might be also happening to be a permanent space.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah, no, and this is great. As we said at the beginning with the BDAO, like DAOs are about people. And now, if you can create even stronger connections, like people live together for some time,
Oh, yeah.
and have those normal experiences. Like, yeah, we have breakfast together. Uh,
It's so important. No, and I think that's well, the first thing I wanted to say is actually the whole Zuzalu network, the zoo pop-up cities. I don't know exactly what we're calling them now, but it's really cool because it's not really a DAO, but it kind of is. But we're not calling it a DAO. It is sort of like a community with
it's a
some
cult.
governance. It's a cult, yeah. But I think that's kind of interesting, right? And you can see a lot of there's a lot of lessons to be learned for formal DAOs that come from seeing how these things are going. Just like there's a lot of lessons for DAOs from just normal companies and the more traditional ways people have worked together for a very long time.
Yeah, it's those people actually stick together or fight with each other, but it's still the connections there.
Totally. No, I mean, and I've made so many honestly, I will say lifelong friends through those experiences. And now when I go to conferences, there's so many people I know from that, right? Or even people who I didn't get to know very well at Susalu, but we follow each other on Twitter now. And now recently I had a reason to connect with somebody professionally because I'm working on ZK stuff now. And, this is somebody who I met at Susalu, but we didn't really talk. We just were introduced. But, we're connected. We follow each other on Twitter and we were able to get into it and talk shop because it was I mean, sure, people are friendly in crypto and it's easy to reach out to people and get a response, but this was a pre-made warm introduction, which was really cool. What I wanted to say is, yeah, I think Suzalu in some ways reminds me of the experience of going to university and living in residence or living in dorms, going to college, what they say in the US, and I think that's one of the only times where people or that's kind of the last time most people get to experience co-living where you spend, more than just transient amounts of time with people and actually get to live with other people and learn from them, people who you maybe wouldn't surround yourself with in your spare time, you're not doing typical social circle. And I think that's really special. And that just leads to all sorts of serendipitous kind of experiences and connections. And it's I think that's one of the real superpowers of this. Conferences are great, but everyone's attention is everywhere. But when you actually stay somewhere for a few weeks, you settle in and you have these kind of random conversations with people who you wouldn't meet, and then you can continue them over breakfast the next day, Yeah, I think that's super, super special.
Yeah, because I feel like people at the conferences have an agenda. Everyone has their intentions there, and it's fair. You are going there because you want to achieve something. But when you are at
Mhm.
the university, like I probably never talk business with, you know, in the dorms. We just have fun and talk
Yeah.
random things. And when you spend more time with people, it feels like the same way. You are a picture project, so everyone knows what you're working on. Now we can relax and just like
Yeah.
have a normal conversation as people. Yeah.
Totally. No, it's funny. I mean, like, yeah, we'll maybe change topics from Zalo, but one fun kind of thing I remember is, um, like, I wasn't very deep into Ethereum protocol stuff or infra stuff. I was, focused on public goods and DeSci and my own science. But I was surrounded by a bunch of people who were like deep in this. So, like for example, somebody was like, "Oh wow, Justin Drake is here," and I didn't know who Justin Drake was. I definitely know who he is now, and we've met a bunch of times and stuff. But I remember I ended up just randomly sitting next to him on a bus when we were, I think, coming back from a hike that Vitalik organized, and 80 people went on this like epic hike. Um, and I was sitting next to him, and we were just chatting, and I just sort of started asking him like, "So how should I like what do you recommend if I want to learn how Ethereum really works? Like how the clients work, how the protocol works, what are the different pieces? Where's the development happening? Like what are the exciting research topics?" And he sort of made some recommendations like reading the ETH2 book, which I still haven't read. But it was just really funny because I'm like, when else will I have a chance to ask Justin Drake like what he's personally excited about research wise within Ethereum? And at the time he told me Mevburn, which I guess has kind of been, now they're calling it different things, pre-confirmations and execution tickets and inclusion lists and all these cool things. But at the time they were just calling it MEV-burn. How do we sort of like burn MEV to give that value back to the, say, validators or stakers or users of the protocol? And yeah, it was kind of funny to think about that. Like this guy, a lot of people, he's kind of a celebrity with Ethereum. And I was like, I don't even know who he is, but I'm going to ask him about this stuff.
Yeah, it's just like dude sitting next to me in the bus. So
Yeah.
like I just ask some random things.
Yeah. And he's a super
Um
nice guy. So of course he gave me a great answer if I still remember, a year and a half later.
yeah, like at the end, like everyone is just a person. Like we are all normal people, and some people are more famous, so
Normal.
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Might spell the money.
normal nerds. We are
Yeah.
normal nerds in crypto space. Some people are more famous, so they like protecting themselves more and stuff like that. But like when you are in like these intimate groups, like those barriers like are not there.
Yeah.
But just to move on like when you basically then like move from Gitcoin out,
Hmm.
was it that time you start working more like in the ZK type of world
No.
or not yet?
No, not yet. So I kind of left Tuvalu, and came back to Toronto, kept working on my PhD, and I stopped working at Gitcoin, and I started just like I was getting more interested in the infrastructure layer. One, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, and I met a lot of smart people working for various like L2s, for example. And there was something cool that Gitcoin tried at the time, which was PGN, Public Goods Network, which was a public goods focused rollup, which has been shut down now, but it was
Yes,
launched
it
as a,
doesn't exist anymore.
no
Don't
longer
try
exists.
it.
Yeah, do not access it. But I really, I thought that was a very cool idea and a cool experiment. And I thought, wow, yeah, like what if we had sequencer revenue going towards funding public goods, right? Obviously, getting enough transaction volume that there's meaningful sequencer revenue, plus all the overhead costs. Running a rollup is expensive, especially a ZK rollup, and I can touch on that later. But that kind of inspired me to start learning about modular blockchains and rollups and how these business models work, because I thought maybe there could be like a DeSci rollup. I was sort of thinking about different DeSci related or non-DeSci product ideas because I was still thinking, oh, like I'd like to found something or work on this, or at the very least, I'll learn by sort of exploring these different product ideas. So that's what kind of brought me down. Like this is like not this past summer, but summer 2023. Just like trying to wrap my head around the whole, modular stack, and if a DeSci rollup made sense, or if there were other kind of products that could use different aspects of this that might make sense. And like in the end, I didn't think of anything. Like I spoke to a lot of people, decided the DeSci rollup idea didn't make sense at the time. Maybe it still will in the future. I mean, Story Protocol is like a whole IP blockchain, for example, um, and they've raised a lot of money.
I just like agree. Like there is tons of money.
Yeah,
I don't understand, totally why it's so valued, but yeah, you can have this like, let's say crazy idea. And then if you get like enough support or like you prove that it can work in the
yeah.
future, like you can run with it.
No, totally. I mean, that's the thing, crypto is like a casino, and this is something that my boss, or one of them, Federico Caron, who's the founder of Lambda Class and one of the co-founders of Align, which I'm working for now, he told me this, and I really like this. And it's like crypto is a casino, but it's also a casino that lets you bet on new technologies because of like how capital formation can work in like a decentralized way. Regular people, more or less, can have the opportunity to kind of like bet on some technology being really successful, which is like a really cool idea, right? So if people think that an IP blockchain can be really successful and sustainable and can have killer apps and has like really good use cases, then it's like, yeah, sure, they're allowed to invest in that. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but at least somebody has a chance to try. I sort of went down the infra rabbit hole, but around this time last year, I was again like sort of trying to not get distracted by all that stuff and focus on finishing my paper and my thesis. This time last year, I'll be done in a few months. There's obviously delays. Science is slow. Getting the paper out took a lot longer than expected. Had to do a lot of reanalysis, yada, yada, yada. But I'd been learning about infra and ZK and all this stuff kind of as a hobby for a while already. And I had figured, okay, once the PhD is done, this is what I'd like to work on, and I'd like to start something of my own at some point, but I think I have a lot to learn still. And if I can find a good team to join, that's working on something cool, smart, nice, interesting people working on something interesting and exciting that can have an impact, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. So I wasn't really looking. I was, keeping in touch with things with people and staying on top of the, what's happening in crypto, spending way too much time on Twitter still. Now it's partly my job to be on Twitter, so haha. But yeah, I wasn't looking to find a job, but I met the team from Aligned and Lambda class kind of by chance through a friend, got introduced, and I didn't go to them looking for a job. I just went for dinner and we were chatting about science, about, blockchain infra, about ZK and all these things. And Bede told me that there was something cool that they were going to be putting a white paper out about over the weekend. And he liked me and he thought I'd be a good person to send to conferences to kind of grow our ecosystem and tell everyone about Aligned. So yeah, that's basically the short story. I couldn't turn down the opportunity to join the team, and they raised successfully in the first part of this year. So yeah, I joined Aligned in June, and it's been a really wild 6 months, and I think it's only gonna get crazier too. Um, but that's really like I'm kind of new to ZK. It's really only been the past 6 months that I've been focused on ZK related things. And there's just so much cool stuff happening that like I think I'll be here for a while.
Nice. And like ZK, you might be new to ZK, but like ZK been here for a while. I remember when I still was working at EY, we were open sourcing the first kind of ZK protocol, the Nightfall, like 2018, the Devcon Prague. So that was kind of my first proper kind of interaction with like, blockchain and doing event actually at Devcon and stuff like that. But like that ZK is very different compared to this ZK. Like the transaction cost of one transaction cost back then like $500. It was like super expensive.
Even at
Like it,
2018 prices, huh?
yeah, exactly. Like it was just like so inefficient, but like we proved the concept,
Yeah,
and like,
that's
n-
yeah.
a- and then it got to like cents
Oh,
eventually in a
yeah.
years, but like,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
crazy
super
stuff.
interested because I remember at Zuzalu, Paul Brody was there from EY, and he
Yeah.
was actually presenting like Nightfalls, like this private L2, and I sat in on the presentation, and I didn't know much about ZK at the time. I was probably trying to do some science, work on some data analysis, but I was like, it was in the co-working space, so I was listening. I think I have some notes in a notebook somewhere. But it seems like that's still like a thing they're working on, and I'm super interested in seeing what this early Nightfall ZK thing, like what the architecture is like. Again, I'm not a engineer, but I think I have a pretty good understanding of like how the big pieces fit together. I'm not going to look at the code myself, but the sort of system architecture, I think I have an idea of like how it all fits together. But that's also another thing I wanted to say, that I heard that Prague, DevCon in Prague was like a really, really good DevCon. So people were saying that was the best one until Bangkok. And Bangkok was my first DevCon, but it's cool that you were there.
Yeah, I think like I did not experience the full of DEF CON in Prague. I was local. I was like, crypto
Oh,
is
yeah.
new to me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know anyone. So it's very different when you are like new to the community and you're going for events. You kind of get to know, but it's hard to get to know any events.
Yeah.
And it was first time I actually met Paul, and then he became my boss. Now He's not my boss anymore, but we are still friends. So
Cool.
still keeping that relationship. But to that point, I will put also in the show notes like the Nightfall repo, so you and other people can check it
Yes.
out.
Sweet.
Still exists. It's still going. There was some partnership with Polygon and stuff in the later stage, which helps. It's like some to me like first DevCon, I knew nobody, no partnership. Like it's hard for me to navigate around. Now I go to Bangkok conference. I know plenty of
Hundreds
people.
of people. Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
you get invited to stuff. It's way more kind of easier to get places you actually want to be at and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So and tech it's similar way.
Yeah, yeah. No, totally. I think like that's the beautiful thing about crypto, and DAOs are definitely a part of that, but it's like I think it's just like a very welcoming community. If you want to learn and if you're excited, it's like I want all my friends to work in this industry because it's super fun and I met so many great people.
Yeah.
Um and it's yeah,
And if
that's
you're genuine yourself, like you really like want to learn, you want to contribute, like people definitely connect with you very well. Like if you come in Lambo, which has like Dogecoin on it, like probably nobody will connect with you.
we're only
Or
the
very
wrong people.
exactly. That's
Yes.
not the
Yeah.
crypto
No,
people we are talking about.
no, exactly. That's the thing. And I think like I'm very thankful that I think I met like the right people when I first got involved in crypto, like, 2.5, 3 years ago. I went to ETH Denver in 2022, and that's what really opened my eyes to things. I went to Shelling Point, and that's basically the first time I heard about Gitcoin, but I applied for it and I really loved the questions they were asking, like um in the application form. And like, yeah, it was I got lucky because everyone I met was mostly through the DeSci circles, and they were all like, "Oh wow, cool, using science for or using crypto to make science better." And yeah, it was awesome. And that's just like I basically went to ETH Denver almost 3 years ago now and decided, okay, this is the industry I need to work in.
Yeah, like and Edinburgh is actually great. Like and I like it probably back then even more because the venues were a little smaller, the crowd
Yeah.
were like little, like more the core Ethereum people. Now it's getting a little bit too big. But it's still great, like because you can still find the people on the places you
And
know
all your
about.
friends are there.
Yeah, are you planning to come this year as well or next
Most
year?
likely, yeah, yeah. We're still figuring out our 2025 calendar in terms of events, hackathons, conferences, etc. But I think we'll probably, I think Aligned will be doing a lot of stuff at ETH Denver. So
Nice.
if that's the case, then I'll be there. Yeah.
Well, we are doing how to DAO in Shelling Point, like Gitcoin. It's kind of
All right.
working on Shelling Point now, so
Mhm.
that can be your next Shelling Point as well. Probably
Oh
not the
yeah.
first one now, but it will be like third or something.
Third one. Yeah, yeah. I didn't go to ETH Denver this year,
Yeah.
but yeah, third Shelling. But yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will shoot you an invite. So now we basically got into like the ZK space, which progress a lot. You can see a lot of the ZK rollups are now popping up. It was predominantly like optimistic rollups, like Polygon and Optimism and Arbitrum. Now even Polygon is basically having their own ZK rollup, and you are working with Align, which it's not ZK rollup if I understand it correctly.
It is. We are not a roll up. No.
So,
Um.
can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I feel like this isn't even like a hot take anymore. I think this is kind of like the consensus opinion, which is that basically all rollups are moving towards being ZK. For people who don't know what ZK is, who are listening, ZK is short for zero knowledge. And this is in reference to zero knowledge proofs, which are a type of cryptographic primitive, programmable cryptography that has some very cool properties. Basically, in zero knowledge proof, there's like two parties involved. There's the prover and there's the verifier. And the prover can generate a mathematical proof of some data or that some computation happened. And then the verifier can verify that this proof is true, that it's correct, without actually needing to do that computation or see the data. And this has some like very cool properties, right? You can sort of like compress computation and still have it verifiable. This has really like this technology has found strong product market fit within blockchains and specifically for scaling blockchains through ZK rollups, like scaling Ethereum and probably all blockchains, because it allows you to basically do verifiable compute off-chain. So you have a separate blockchain that's a lot cheaper that generates a proof of its state, of all the account balances, and that all the computation within virtual machine happened correctly, and that can be verified in Ethereum. So this basically lets Ethereum offload computation, offload transactions to other blockchains without needing to trust that it's correct, because they can just verify it using cryptography. The thing is, to run a zero-knowledge ZK rollup, it's actually quite expensive, because verifying these proofs on Ethereum is expensive. It's computationally expensive, right? Like the EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine, was not designed for verifying proofs. So it's pretty much just like computationally expensive, and thus gas is expensive to do this. So running a ZK rollup can cost like a few million a year in verification costs on Ethereum, which is like kind of crazy to think about. And Aligned, the project I'm working for, we are not a rollup, but we are a decentralized network that verifies zero-knowledge proofs and posts the results to Ethereum with security borrowed from Ethereum through restaking. So we're our first product, our ZK verification layer, is an eigenlayer AVIA, actively validated service. Basically, we're kind of like, I think how you can think of this is, imagine like a traditional Web 2 microservice that somebody could use in like a cloud computing setting that is backed by stake. So it is like backed by crypto economic security derived from Ethereum, or borrowed from Ethereum, right? So what this microservice, if you want to call it that, is doing is verifying zero-knowledge proofs. So you send proofs to Aligned, Aligned verifies them, and then posts results to Ethereum saying that the proofs are verified correctly. And by doing this, we can actually make zero-knowledge proof verification on Ethereum much, much, much cheaper, like 99% cheaper. And, we can verify thousands of proofs per second. Basically, the more proofs that get verified, the cheaper it becomes, because the cost of verification gets split up between all the proofs in a batch. So this is what I'm working on right now. I am part of the ecosystem team, and we actually launched our mainnet beta on Friday. So this is
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, the engineering team has been working tirelessly for 9 months, but they did ship this in 9 months. And I know I'm rambling on about this, but it is something I'm excited about, because I think like there will be governance questions to think about in the future. Tying this back to DAOs, but yeah. So I mean, like there's still some upgrades that need to be made. We're still in beta. I don't think this might be the first podcast that's being recorded related to this, actually, because this just happened Friday. But yeah, basically some things are being improved, but it's already live, so people can already send proofs to Align and have them verified with the results on
Nice.
Ethereum.
So if I understand correctly, but you are still competitor to like ZK Sync. Like
No.
no?
No, we're not a roll up, and we're not like creating like an execution environment for people to have smart contracts or anything. But a ZK roll up would be one of our potential users, for example. Like they could use us for
So they
verification.
will get more efficient. Okay.
Yes, we basically make it so ZK becomes affordable enough to use in all sorts of applications. So like bridges, rollups are very direct applications, but really we're excited about things that people haven't even tried yet, because ZK on Ethereum was just too expensive. So I think like
I
identity
know.
applications, yeah, exactly.
It
ZK
used to be
co-processors,
500 per transaction.
exactly. And now it's like, now with Align, like this can be super, super, super cheap, right? So I think for like L3s or app chains, that without us, it doesn't really make sense economically to do that as a ZK rollup, and then you're stuck with like an optimistic stack. But with us, I think that becomes a lot more feasible. This is just the first product we're launching. There's a lot more we have in the pipeline to get excited about. Like we want to build on top of this verification layer ourselves, because there's a lot of ZK products we want to build. But yeah, we're not competing with Rollup. If anything, they are our customers or partners or whatever you want to call them, right? Our whole mission is to make basically accelerate Ethereum's roadmap, because ZK is like the future of Ethereum. You probably seen
So
the
was it
insane announcement.
something what Justin Drake told you to do?
No, but I'm sure he's had a lot of conversations with folks on our team. I mean, yeah, like Lambda class, where we were incubated, is quite involved in the whole Beam Chain initiative. They are working on a execution client called ETHREX, an L1 client for Ethereum, as well as an L2 client and a consensus client written in Elixir. So the sort of, not parent company, but the company that the founders and the engineers that I work with came from, and where the whole project was incubated, they were very involved in Ethereum development, because again, we're accelerating Ethereum's roadmap and the adoption of ZK. And initially, this is by making verification very cheap, very fast, and very scalable. because
Yeah.
now more people can build with ZK.
And that's super cool. And like, if you want to learn more about the scaling future of Ethereum, there is actually a great post from Vitalik,
Yep.
describing all the phases and
Very
all
good
the
series.
parts.
Yeah.
And as I see, like one of the parts is helped by the team from Boris from Aligned. No, this is cool, and I think that's what can like help this ecosystem to grow. That we actually work together and help kind of coordinate. And like I would tie it back to your research. Like it's very fluid. There are these companies working. They are not connected to each other at all times. But if you flag them with some color, I think you are flagging them with calcium, I believe, those proteins. So if we flag
Almost.
those companies and DAOs with something, you can see that they sometimes
Yeah.
like stick together, help each other, and continue in their journey.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. And you have to kind of make these things legible, right? Like when I'm studying cells, we can't just look with our naked eye and see proteins inside a cell. These are on the nanoscale. They're tiny. They're submicroscopic, right? So it's all about labeling things using different tools that let you see what's happening, right? And some of the questions you had before we got on this call were kind of around like, what are my sentiments on DAOs right now? Do they work? Am I bullish on them? Am I bearish on them? I'd say I'm still bullish on them as a concept. I think in their current form, there's a lot of issues, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep trying to do this because there's a lot of things that you can only do as a DAO, I think, right? Like, for example, I'm tying this back to work, right? Like we care a lot about decentralization, which is why we are building decentralized infrastructure for Ethereum that makes Ethereum better. So people don't need to rely on centralized solutions to different problems. Govern over such infrastructure in a decentralized way, like you kind of need some sort of DAO-like structure, right? Otherwise, you're always trusting some company or individual to the right thing and keep running this and stewarding this, right? And like this is one of the superpowers of crypto, right? So I think like it's been cool to see which DAO tooling kind of projects or startups have like survived over the last like 2-3 years. And some of them have, right? And I think like there's iteration happening on all of this all the time, and people are gonna be realizing some stuff is too complicated. And I think like I'm not really involved in governance related stuff right now, but it is something that I follow on Twitter at least and newsletters. And it's cool to see that there's a lot of people still trying this, a lot of ecosystems, a lot of rollups, for example. Obviously there's problems, but it still seems like how it has to be done, which is why I'm kind of bullish on the concept, right? Like I don't think DAOs are good for a lot of things. Like in a lot of cases, a company is what you want because you need to move quickly and you need to have like centralized decision making and authority, and that's how you can achieve your goals within the time frame that you have. But for some things, like something that's meant to be around for a very, very, very long time, longer than anybody who's currently involved may continue to be involved in it, then it's like I think DAOs are still powerful, and like we need to keep experimenting with them and trying them out and using parts of DAOs in a lot of different things.
Yeah, I
It's important.
totally agree with that. Like, we experiment a lot in the last 3 years. We figure out there is no one DAO that fits all. There is like so many different type of DAOs, and you mentioned the decentralization and or efficiency. And, sometimes there is a trade-off, and sometimes we just need more of the efficiency and then we, adjust to it. And like on that note, like Gitcoin used to be like super like huge community, many people, and now they are more like core teams, very efficient, working on like shipping product. Yeah, it's actually what they had to do to become again like successful and start growing,
Yeah,
so.
totally.
And this is like what the company or any organization should think of, like what's the like benefit for like how we actually can get all the benefits, can we grow, and later on we can again expand maybe, but now we need to really focus on shipping products.
Definitely.
and
Definitely, right? And I
and
think
it's
that's like that's a
the
cool
life
thing, like, yeah,
cycle.
definitely, it's important. Like, I haven't followed it too recently, but, around the time that Owaki was, returning to the helm of Gitcoin, a year and a bit ago, I was still kind of involved in governance a bit. I had some GTC that I was, like, using to vote on governance proposals, and I was staying involved and reading all this stuff. And I think, like, the way that Gitcoin has been doing this, at least from the last that I saw, it makes sense and it's necessary because it's a competitive market, and it is sort of like it needs to generate revenue somehow, for example, for it to be able to continue its mission of like funding public goods, giving people the tools to fund public goods. But at the same time, it's kind of like I have this alternative thing, and I'm happy this is what happened. But say people said, okay, Gitcoin got too bloated and like it's running out of money or whatever, and it shuts down, it gets sunset, if you want to put it into kind terms. Then I also thought, or I'm thinking right now anyway, like, doesn't mean that it was a failure. I don't think so, right? Because like you look at the impact that Gitcoin had in terms of funding projects, right? And we're talking like whatever, 70 million plus, maybe it's 80 million now, in funding to public goods, open source software, sort of like giving developers a chance to try to like take their idea and build something great with it. That's on the one hand, but also just like the community of like contributors and members and supporters and grantees. That's like a product, if you want to call it, that will outlive the DAO probably, right? That's going to live on for decades because of the connections in the community that were made. And then also the people who worked at Gitcoin as contributors. I mean, like the professional networks that came from this, professional opportunities. Like, I think this kind of has the potential to be looked back on as having like a Medici effect, sort of, where like there's all these people who came together to work on something really cool under some like shared philosophy and like mission and purpose. And, now everyone who I know from Gitcoin is still like doing great things, working at great projects. I have tons of friends who are like all sorts of things in crypto, and I know them from Gitcoin. And it's like that's one of those things where it's like, how can you say that Gitcoin failed? Like, I'm not saying it did, but say somebody did say Gitcoin failed, I'd be like, no, it didn't. It did like so much positive stuff for the world.
Yeah, and like like when you look at it, and I've been at Gitcoin probably almost 2 years, and I basically went through like 3 reorganizations. And when I look at the people from like the first wave who left, they are like successful contributors in other projects, or they are run their own funds, and then others like they run the next Zuzalu
Yeah.
node, or like there are so like diverse type of projects which are actually run or founded by former Gitcoin contributors. And they got these ideas there, or like the like how they got into crypto through there. And yeah, I definitely agree, like Gitcoin was like great like nurturing ground for projects and people, and they're still going well. And if you're still interested in consulting, they launched professional services arm
Oh,
for grants programs.
interesting.
So I'm not sure if they are hiring, or but like if you still like want to do little consulting on the side, maybe you can reach out to some folks at Gitcoin.
Cool.
Well, I think we are kind of I went through all the questions I had, but is there something I did not mention, didn't ask, you would like to say?
You think? I mean, I think, well, one, thank you for giving me the opportunity to yap for an hour or more. I'm always down for that. And no, I think we covered all the things. I mean, like, I could talk about DAOs or crypto or anything for hours. I think my kind of closing thoughts are, I mean, on DeSci, I'm so very excited for DeSci, even though I'm not very involved in it, but there's exciting stuff happening in that space. I still think like the superpower of crypto and capital formation in a global, decentralized, permissionless way is very, very powerful. There's just some things we got to figure out about how to like bring this to like you bridge that to the traditional scientific world, and also to govern over this in like an effective, sustainable way. It has a lot of potential. I'm super excited for it. In terms of DAOs, same thing. I think DAOs are important as a concept. Maybe DAO is the wrong term for these kind of like decentralized organizations or on-chain organizations. Maybe we're going to do away with the DAO terminology one day. But the idea, I think, is around to stay, and it's important. And I'm excited to be involved with more DAOs, when I have a little bit more time. Yeah. And I don't know, Gitcoin public goods, all really great stuff. Donate to Gitcoin grants if you're watching this. And and check out the How to DAO book. I'm really excited to read it because I remember, yeah, I did a call with one of the authors or contributors. Man, that would have been like spring 2023, I think. So getting on 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm super excited for the launch. And to come to the event in
Thank you.
Denver and to read the book and to see all the other podcasts, because I'm sure there's some really great interviews here. So Punkar, thank you.
Thanks, Boris. No, this was a great discussion, and really appreciate you coming in. And 2 years ago contributing with your interview to our book. It was like 3-year journey to publish this book, but we are here. So
Oh,
if you haven't ordered this book yet, now is your chance. There
order
is
it.
no discount. Just like order it on Amazon, and it helped like, also get the DeSci angle to it. And as you said, like DAOs are here to stay. The concept will be evolving, but we are here to support the movement. And if you want to be part of the How to DAO movement, an easiest way is just to grab the book, read it, and then let's go from there. So thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Boris, for coming. And this is the How to DAO podcast. Thank you for tuning into How to DAO. If you are excited about the future of DAOs, as we are, don't forget to check our book, How to DAO, available on Amazon. And for those looking for something special, visit howtodao.xyz to grab a limited partner edition version with an NFT that unlocks some very exclusive perks. And if you want to dive even deeper, we just launched our 6-week course on DAOs packed with actionable insight and expert guidance. So get the book, follow us on social media, join our community, and we will guide you through the fascinating world of decentralized autonomous organizations. Until next time, keep building, keep DAOing.